let's quickly deal with what happened in Parliament yesterday, since you're taking us to Parliament. Minority Chief Whip and MP for Asawasi Muntaka Mubarak, supported by Okudjeta Ablakwa, who is here. They broke the news in December that an awards event by the Millennium Excellence Foundation for expatriate businesses was an avenue for exploitation, extortion. The awards, facilitated by the Ministry of Trade, allegedly exacted $100,000 from participants who desired to sit with President Akufo-Addo at the event. 2.6 million was raised against expenditure of 2.3 million, and the money paid into Trade Ministry accounts, as the President's investigations found. His seat was not auctioned, and no officer of state did any wrong. The Trade Ministry issued a report discrediting the allegations. Muntaka and the NDC minority reject these as self-serving and attempts to cover up wrongdoing. They got the 175 MPs summoned under certificate of emergency. They pushed and got a 5-member bipartisan committee to probe the matter. But to what end? So, Sami, what was wrong with the President's assessment of the matter to warrant such an expensive enterprise of a recall of Parliament?
Well, thank you very much. Let me begin by addressing your latter concern, expensive recall, and state for the record that, and I'm glad Kojo is here, I don't know if it's a different situation for the majority side. On our side, no TNT paid. There's been no cost to the state. You
rejected it?
We returned to Parliament from our constituencies with our own resources and have since left the house with our own resources. The state has not spent anything on us.
You will be paid?
So
your allowances will be paid?
I'm not aware of that.
Are you saying you reject them?
There have been 2 previous instances there were no payments, I can tell you. In the case of the Merchant Bank Fortis recall, the case of the Ford Expedition recall, there were no payments. I was in the house.
I see.
So I don't expect.
But that was a major complaint, and officers of
yes.
Parliament were talking about that. Yeah, that you'll be paid.
I've heard people say that
okay.
we just
but just state that point for me. Are you saying that if you were paid, you reject it?
We will. And we are not expecting any payment. We didn't do this because we...
The NDC minority will reject allowances for this sitting, the basis of the NPP's claim that this was a needless, expensive enterprise.
Yes, so no cost to the state at all. I want that to be placed on record. Now, Samson, the gravamen of the matter. You have the now infamous letter we put out, the 23rd October 2017 letter, signed by the Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry, the Honorable Carlos Ahenkra. In that letter, which is now gone viral, you see that government sets out to collaborate with the Millennium Excellence Foundation to organize the Ghana Expatriate Business Awards. The letter then invites expatriate businesses to contribute towards the event, and there was a sponsorship package attached to the letter. If you paid $100,000 and $75,000, you get to sit by President Akufo-Addo in the presidential circle.
Plus several other benefits.
Plus several other benefits, including an exclusive private dinner for 2.
Letter from who?
The letter from Carlos
Ahenkra.
I see. He has a copy here, I hope.
Yes, we do. Okay. He's right about it. So let's go on. Yeah.
So the two issues which we take serious note of is proximity to the president, access for a fee, and the exclusive private dinner. Clearly, we raised ethical issues, that this was unethical. This has the potential to put the president in a conflict of interest situation in violation of Article 284 of the Constitution. Because if you've paid $100,000, which then guarantees you an exclusive private dinner at a later date, what are you going to be discussing with the president? What requests are you going to be making? And because you have paid $100,000 or $75,000, does that not put the president in an awkward position, quite a weak position, when you make some demand of him, which may not necessarily be in the national interest? So we raise the alarm bells. And the response is something. You've been in this country. First, when the minority chief whip raised it on the 15th of December on the floor of the House during the estimates of the Trade Ministry, the response from our colleagues on the other side was that, we are looking at estimates. We can't take that matter now. That's what the majority leader said. We then issued a statement to draw attention to the breaches, in our opinion, of the Public Financial Management Act, the Financial Regulations Act, and all of that. And then said that the president must intervene. He must speak up to the extent that his office is embroiled in this. Is he aware that when he sat at that event, people had paid to sit by him? Is he also having exclusive private dinners as we speak because people paid that amount of money? We need to know. He's at the center of it. Fortunately, the presidency intervened. The spokesperson to the president, Mr. Eugene Ahin, said that this has come to the presidency as a surprise, like all Ghanaians. The president had no idea, and that the trade minister has been queried, and Ghanaians will hear from the presidency by 5 p.m. that day. Now, on the 21st of December, the Minister of Information, my brother Kojo's boss, issued a statement saying that based upon the query, the Minister for Trade and Industry has presented sets of facts to the president. The president does not see any wrongdoing and has asked the Minister for Trade and Industry to put out the facts to the Ghanaian public. Now, if you look at the statement that was issued on the 21st of December, we have raised several contradictions with that 21st of December statement signed by the Honorable Alan Chairmantin and the earlier statement from that same ministry on the 17th of December. If you look at paragraph 1 of the 21st December letter, the 21st December statement, it says that the presidency had no idea, no official of the presidency or the Flagstaff House knew about the event. Yet paragraph 3 of the 17th December statement put out by the Ministry of Trade and Industry says that the Millennium Excellence Foundation came up with this award, the first ever award for the expatriate business community, then proceeded to the Flagstaff House, the presidency, got approval, and then went on to partner with the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So the first contradiction. Now, paragraph 7 of the 21st December statement also says that for the avoidance of doubt, nobody paid $100,000. And yet, on the 18th of December 2017, the PRO of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and I have the article here, the Ministry of Trade and Industry has learnt with disdain the baseless allegations flying in the media. This was a statement that they issued. So I'm on the Star FM online website. So, quote, but speaking to Francis Aban on the Morning Star Monday, spokesperson for the Trade Ministry, Prince Boache, said even though monies were paid by the businesses, it didn't influence who picked an award on the night. Quote, I will be a hypocrite to say that there were others who sat at the table with Nana Akufo-Addo and did not pay. As a platinum sponsor, you had to fulfill some obligations. If an event organizer decides to tag a category of an event as a presidential circle, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, he said. He continued, quote, the government partnered the foundation so that the private sector would know that the government is in full support of the event. We wanted to make sure that monies paid did not influence who won an award. The monies were paid into the Ministry of Trade and Industry account because we didn't want post-event challenges. Mr. Saeed Fakri, CEO of Dream Realty and Innesfly, paid $100,000 together with other CEOs. Unquote. This is Prince Boache, the PRO of the Trade Ministry. And yet the statement from the government signed by the Trade Minister says that nobody paid $100,000. So who is telling us the truth? Several contradictions. You remember that on this same network,
Alan Shamanting's report
clearly
admits that some persons made
some payments. Yes.
Made payments.
Yes.
But it points you to the fact that there were many who sat on the presidential table who didn't pay. So paying was not a prerequisite, so to speak.
No, but paragraph 7 of the statement, Honorable Alan Chamantin states emphatically that nobody paid $100,000 amongst those who sat by the president. That's what the statement says emphatically. And the PRO of the Ministry of Trade is saying that I will be a hypocrite to confirm that point. So we are saying that all of these contradictions, remember when it was first raised, it was a flat-out denial that Honorable Muntaka had lied, committed perjury. Then it moved to, okay, you know, the 17th December statement. It was just a partnership, deal with the Millennium Excellence Foundation. We know nothing about the fundraising. Then when we told them that, look, be careful, we have receipts. Then they had to change the story again and say that, okay, we only decided to collect the monies on behalf of the Millennium Excellence Foundation, but we have since transferred all the monies to the Millennium Excellence Foundation. Then Ashim Morton, the president of the foundation, holds a press conference and says that, you know what, we have only received some of the money. The ministry is retaining some because we have an agreement with the ministry that we'll be organizing this event every other year. So an account has been created and they are retaining some. Another contradiction. So the 21st December statement then had to say that, okay, we are shifting position. We have done an audit, self-audit. Can you believe that? That self-audit itself, so incestuous. The audit service should have been the body, some external auditor, in the very least, should be the one auditing. Ministry of Trade and the Millennium Excellence Foundation say they've audited themselves. They raised 2.6 million. They spent 2.3 million. Then the statement says that every private organization deserves a fair returns on their work. So we are not told how much profit has been made by the foundation and how much is being retained. We are only told that 2.6 million cedis was raised, 2.3 million cedis was spent. Even that, we will be proving when the committee invites us that far in excess of 2.6 million cedis was raised. We have all of that bank details. Now,
sticking points. The letter of 23rd October 2017,
yes,
which initiated the invitations to the participants. We are privy to that, and we have been told that the Millennium Excellence Foundation was told very categorically that you shall not use the president's name to raise any monies. Yet they went ahead to do that. So why do you want to blame any government functionary, for that matter, for what had happened? And you are also being pointed to the fact that to have the president of the foundation come out to suggest that the use of president was in reference to him and not President Akufo-Addo was to seek to, you know, as it were, take themselves from blame for having done what they were instructed not to do.
Samson, it doesn't get more ridiculous than this. If you look at the 23rd October letter, it's clear. Earlier paragraphs had talked about the support of the expatriate business community for President Akufo-Addo, how they are supporting his 10-point economic transformation agenda, one district, one factory, and all of that. I didn't know that Mr. Ashim Morton is the one spearheading all of this economic transformation. That President Akufo-Addo has ceded all of this economic transformation of Ghana to Mr. Ashim-Morton. Clearly, there was some damage control which was not well advised. And Mr. Ashim-Morton is a fine gentleman. I know him very well. But as for this one, he shouldn't. Nobody believed it. It was really, really ridiculous. It didn't do his image any good. Now, the point you also make something about the outright denial and assertion in the 21st December statement that they had asked the Millennium Excellence Foundation not to charge anybody for the event to sit by the table of the president. That also flies in the face of the 17th December statement from the Ministry of Trade and Industry. And I have that statement here. You notice...
So you conclude on that quickly.
You notice that from the 17th December statement, paragraph 7, non-mischievous minds, I'm quoting, non-mischievous minds with a basic knowledge of event organization will know that, as is the case with all fundraising activities, there are different sponsorship categories and packages with their attendant benefits. As to how one chooses to categorize them, whether presidential circle or platinum down to the least package, is only a matter of semantics, nomenclature, and ingenuity, unquote. So in the 17th December statement from the Ministry of Trade, they were justifying and defending the collection of these funds, and even justifying the presidential table, that those of us criticizing are only exposing our ignorance.
I think
and yet, 21st December, you are now saying that...
I think you are well understood. So you're well understood. So this is what the NDC minority says, that the probe is essential and non-negotiable. And they got that. Let's hear what the Speaker of Parliament had to say eventually, after all the back and forth in Parliament yesterday.
And I'm convinced that the recall provided for 1123 is mandatory once the requisite number of MPs have signed the petition as appropriately provided by law. It's mandatory. I do not see any discretion therein, and I do not intend to invoke any. Nevertheless, once Parliament is recalled, a Speaker may have the discretion regarding what business takes place. For that matter, anything that offends the issues raised above will be grounds for, and I quote, open and close, quotation ends, policy. In other words, you recall and then you send away. Not to encourage anything that will be considered frivolous, vexatious, or otherwise an abuse of the process of Parliament. In other words, that right provided, we should be careful, does not become a tool for promoting that which is frivolous, vexatious, or otherwise an abuse of the process of Parliament. Our good nation cannot be allowed to sink into insecurity and confusion, and that is why I have allowed this to come on, notwithstanding the incompetence in regularities. That kind of society will not help the honorable members. Order. The special committee is set and composed as follows: Honorable Ameyaw Chairman, Chair. Honorable Dr. Esibe Yeboah, Honorable Boabin Asamoah, Honorable Afiji, Honorable Dr. Ayendi, Ayendi.
Right. So, Kojo, the NPP majority lost its vehement fight to have the memo shut down as incompetent, and critics are asking, what do you have to hide?
Well, so two quick corrections I need to do before I get into the substance. The majority in Parliament, right from the onset, and if you play the clip of the majority leader, said that this House must stand ready to investigate this matter. The majority in Parliament, right from the onset, never sought to prevent Parliament from investigating this matter. What the majority in Parliament, led by the leader, Chairman Sabonsu, said was that despite the fact that we're willing to go into the matter, the documents that had been presented to us, and you're a lawyer, there are lawyers at this table, when we say, for example, that a writ is incompetent, it is not, I think, the political use of the expression. It's a technical expression that talks about the fact that it suffers a fatal deficiency. And therefore, the argument was that they need to go and make the corrections and come, because at the time of the pre-sitting meeting, we had already indicated our 3 members to form this committee. They had also indicated theirs. On the floor, the majority leader was categorical that we are, or this House must stand ready to do this job, but this thing needs to be corrected, and then we can get into that. So that's a very critical correction, because the impression is being created as though the majority sought to shoot it down. And I'll give you a lot of evidence that shows
but you
the
know
novelty
also,
of what we did yesterday.
You know also that as a lawyer, you know also that some of these preliminary objections can lead to the entire thing being shut down terminally forever, shut forever.
Absolutely, and that's why you had the
Except
speaker.
that there are some, the law will say the irregularity should not, as it were, kill it.
And that is why you heard the speaker talk about the fact that there's an interest of the Republic. I'll come to those ones. The second factual inaccuracy I need to correct is this, I don't want to say mischievous, but this interesting way by which my friend Sami and our colleagues in the minority put out, and that's why I deliberately asked, do you have a copy of that letter?
Right.
Where they deliberately put out Carlos Ahenkre's letter and create an impression that that letter created sponsorship categories, including seat at the table, etc. Then they quickly seek to attach a second document which you do not interrogate. You may be tempted to think it's part of Carlos Ahenkre's letter. I tell you on all authority that this document they have attached to the letter from Carlos Ahenkre is not a document from the ministry. But I'm excited that they have called for this probe, because during this probe, and that's why we're excited about this probe, all of these matters which they threw up in the public domain will have an opportunity to interrogate. But let me take you back to
that the attachment.
You have
that the
totally
attachment,
misled.
that
Totally
the attachment
misled.
is not. That the attachment is not.
Don't worry.
It's
That's
not.
why we call for the probe.
Got this.
That the attachment. Sorry. That the attachment which spoke about the various categories of sponsorship payment you needed to make, including the 100,000.
Yes.
Is not authored by the Trade Ministry.
It's not.
It's not in doubt. And the NDC has not
And
said
it's not
so.
been, no.
But their contention has been that. Let me finish my question. Let me finish my question. Their contention has been that the minister's letter, the deputy minister's letter, also says those who are taking advantage of this should, be aware of the benefits attached. And this is what it said. Under the heading corporate partnership. We invite you, and this Carlos Ahenkre writing, we invite you to support the organization and hosting of this laudable initiative with the benefits attached. They say the benefits attached is what the Millennium Excellence Foundation attached, which said you pay 100,000,
there is a criteria,
you pay 75,000.
and you would notice that on page 1, there's a criteria for qualification. Then there's individual recognition. There are benefits that are stated in the document from the ministry.
Okay.
And then there's another document with this seat, etc., from the Millennium Excellence, which they deliberately attached to it.
Because we take strong
create,
exception.
don't worry, but that's why we call for this
probe.
probe. Don't worry.
So if there's going to be a probe, you cannot be here.
But you have sat here in the face of that probe and have almost, pronounced people guilty.
Very interesting.
You have almost done that. But don't worry. Don't worry.
Put out the facts as they are.
No, Sami,
you cannot accuse us of deliberately adding documents. No, I take strong exception. He can't do that.
Exception noted. Exception noted.
These letters.
Sami, thank you.
Exception noted.
Your point is noted.
Came from the Trade Ministry.
Your point is noted.
Signed by Carlos Ahenkre. The
Don't
23rd October.
Let's hear Kojo.
Don't worry.
It's one
Sami,
and the
don't
same.
worry. You have had your say.
Let's hear Kojo.
Nobody's piecing
Let's hear Kojo.
documents.
If he's impugning what is happening, then you have done more than that. So let him speak.
In the face of the probe that is yet to happen, you have sat here, you claim they are facts. That's what you've called me. So these are the facts.
Because they've played out in the public domain.
Because
every
you have put
Ghanaian
them
knows
out,
that.
creating a certain impression. No problem. We are not worried. We are happy to allow a parliamentary probe to go into it. Right. But I need to correct that this document that they put out is not part of the ministry's document. Right. But at the probe, all of these things will come out. But let me go into my substantive argument.
Go ahead, please.
Yesterday, when my brother Sami got on the floor and was seconding the motion, he talked about the fact that it was important for Parliament to investigate these matters as part of our oversight and investigative functions. I agree with him 100%. It is important for Parliament as an institution to be strengthened to do its job. And this current majority in Parliament, this current Speaker, the current structure that we have, should be applauded immensely for ensuring that that happens. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. This is not the first time that a minority has sought to request that Parliament does its job. I'll take you back to, I think, 1998, December 1998, when the Honorable Hackman Uswajiman, then in the minority, raised a motion or moved a motion on the floor of the House that Parliament investigate an allegation that had been made by Ismail Agwazo, who was a national security advisor to then, I think, Sani Abacha of Nigeria, to the extent that some $5 million, which they called a bribe, had been given to President Rawlings of the day. D.F. Annan, Justice D.F. Annan of blessed memory, was Speaker. This is the same NDC today in minority that is waxing lyrical about how Parliament's work should be done, probity and accountability. And we are saying we agree, and I'll come to that point. On the floor, the Honorable Hackman Uswajiman moved that motion. You know what Justice D.F. Annan did? He shot the motion down there and then that it will not be tolerated in the House.
No, what was the basis? He gave a grounds for it.
Are you able to tell us what the grounds were?
He gave a grounds for it. We were told, for example, that you call something your table office, right?
Yes.
That this was not, had not gone through or was not before the table office and
Thank
so
you.
on.
Yeah. And I will demonstrate the difference between that approach and what we did yesterday. I'm happy you put it out. I'll give you another instance. And in that same instance, after Hackman Uswajiman had moved that motion, and mind you, Parliament is the master of its own rules. Parliament is the master of its own rules.
That's right.
And a motion had been moved that in the interest of all of this probity and accountability, which are the forefront of our 1992 Constitution, this House should do its work and investigate this allegation that has implications on the image of our presidency and our country. Justice D.F. Annan, under the argument that the table office had not received a particular document, shut it down. In spite of what was described as the bigger national interest, the so-called procedural irregularities were used to shoot it down. I'll give you a few other examples. I'll take you to
that's why I was pointing you to that some of these procedural irregularities can lead to you losing the whole
I will come to that, and that is why I will show you the difference in what has happened.
And that could have happened yesterday.
I will show you the difference in what has happened yesterday. I'll take you to 1st September 2016, when the motion was moved that this whole Ford saga that had the former president mentioned, it should be investigated. I'll come to that one. Right. Should be investigated by the House. The Honorable Speaker of Parliament at the time, the Honorable Dua Jahu, then in the chair, we didn't get to any of the preliminary stages. Then in the chair said this is not a matter that the House was going to, interrogate, and he raised or he gave a ratio that parts of the matter were heading towards the courts, and there were parts indeed in the courts. In the Fortis matter as well, when the motion was moved, again, preliminary, the Speaker in his chair shut it down. You had members of Parliament, members who today are claiming the moral high ground on probity and accountability, members of Parliament who had sworn an oath that they were going to ensure that Parliament did its job. They sat down and gagged Parliament.
Was it not that Shraj was seized with the matter?
But who says that if Shraj, what is the authority that says that if Shraj is investigating a matter, Parliament is proscribed from investigating it? Okay. That is never the position of the law.
And then in the Fortis matter, the ruling was that it was before the courts.
Yes, and again, who says that if the courts are I am of the view that if you said that to the extent that the courts were examining the matter, Parliament is estopped from investigating, I think it even flies in the face of the courts. Are you telling us that the courts will take a decision based on what Parliament's investigation are establishing? No. But here's the point. The then majority sought it prudent to gag Parliament and prevent Parliament from doing its due job of investigating matters. Why? I'm of the view that they thought that it was politically prudent to do so. Did they have something to hide, for which reason they stopped these investigations from taking place in Parliament? Those ones are gone by. When this current Speaker took the seat, this current majority leader took a seat, we have been of the view that Parliament should be allowed to do its job, empowered to do its job. We're also of the view that where you have absolutely nothing to hide, why do you fuss over an investigation? And so the first one, for example, was when in 2017, I think it was in 31st of May 2017, when the minority leader moved a half-hour motion that we bring the finance minister to come and provide information on the 2.5 billion CD equivalent bond that had been done earlier. You know who seconded the motion? It was the majority leader. And we wholeheartedly supported the exercise because we in truth believe that Parliament should be strengthened and given an opportunity to do its work. Yesterday, and that's why I started off by telling you that at the pre-sitting meeting, we agreed. We put our 3 names forward. When the majority leader got on his feet, he said quite clearly that Parliament must stand ready to do this job. We have our names ready, but the technical errors here need to be corrected before we do that. But
you're saying that what they presented yesterday, there was grounds to shoot it down.
There was, and I'll explain to you why.
Okay. There was grounds to shoot it down.
Yes.
But it was not on the magnanimity of the majority.
No, it wasn't magnanimity per se. Those are not my words. It is because we believe, and the Speaker's words were quite significant. They were poignant. He says that in the interest of the Republic, this is a matter that must be investigated. So that, for example, the kind of what I call mischief that is being played here can now be properly tended, interrogated, and answered to the Ghanaian public. If you read Article 1123, what it says is that you can request Parliament to convene. All you need is 15% of members to sign up. And that's what the Speaker described as an administrative action. Once you do that, we'll come. But once we come, the documentation you have put before us will be examined. In this particular instance, the documentation they had put together was a list of signatures. It did not carry, for example, even a reason. Then there was a memo which an individual who sought to move the motion had signed, ferrying the request. Remember I told you that the request they submitted was just a collection of signatures. Yeah. The substantive matter was not even attached to it. Then there was a memo signed by a person, the minority chief whip, who sought to move the motion. And in that request, he had described that he was a party to the request. In that letter, in that memo, he had described that he was a party to the request, which was incorrect. You put all of these things together, and the Speaker directed that on the face of the document you have given me, there are procedural irregularities. But this is a matter I want investigated. So go correct them. I'll stand this house down, 30 minutes, go correct them and bring it down. But you know what our friends are trying to do? They enjoy or they benefit more from the propaganda mischief than the substantive action. Indeed, in our conversations before the House, many of them were expecting that we would adopt the same approach and shoot it down. Then the propaganda mischief will start. So when indeed the Speaker ruled that they should go and make the correction and come back, they then opted not to even do the correction. Just like you rightly said, hoping that on the face of that technicality, it will be thrown out, and then they can go back to the propaganda mischief. And that is why the Speaker said, even though on the face of this document, I should be throwing this document out, in the interest of the Republic, and because I do not want to say anybody is hiding behind technicalities to avoid Parliament doing its job, I will still convene this committee to do its job. I think that it's a marked departure from where we have been. We may have, I have said over and over again that I don't believe in media trials of people. We may have differences on some of these documents. I've sought to expose one of them. You disagree with me. Absolutely no problem. Let the probe begin. Let the documentation go. Let people now be subjected to cross-examination of the things that they are bringing and queried about it.
Thank you.
And the facts to be made bare.
Thank you. Now, I ask again to what end, and I'm asking you, Joyce, that let's look at the terms of reference given to this committee. That one, when did the matter under consideration arise? Can it be perceived in terms of what is described as novus actus intervenis? Meaning, is this something new that has arisen? 3, could the matter have been raised during the regular sitting session with prudent vigilance? And 4, has the matter been raised in any form whatsoever during the session, and why raise it in the moment Parliament is on recess? From the terms of reference that they have, are they really going to investigate why monies were paid or not paid, and who did wrong or who did not do wrong?
Well, that's why I'm actually getting a little bit curious and wondering just what the instructions that were issued by the Right Honorable Speaker Michael Quay, what the implications are, what the import is, and above all, what is the legal basis for these instructions. And I do recall that clearly I listened to one of the interviews thereafter, and the gentleman actually mentioned and made reference to these specific terms, which actually, to my mind, are a clear departure from what the subject matter really is. You know, you said something about the recall of Parliament and whether it was frivolous, vexatious, and expensive, and what have you. Democracy, the world over, is expensive. And we have adopted this mode of governance. I think in the interest of transparency, in the interest of accountability, in the interest of our fledgling democracy, I think this is an exercise that is in good order. I do think that there's been precedents where similar recalls of Parliament have been undertaken. I think that yesterday in particular, to us who were watchers, observers, who listened, we saw the efforts and machinations of the majority leader in Parliament. Indeed, it is not to say that attempts were not made, as it were, to throw out this motion. I would say that we should also commend the tenacity of spirit of the minority. They stood their ground, they argued strongly. I listened to the minority leader when he stood up clearly to insist on the rights of the minority to do as they had requested. Let's recall that even in company private businesses, minority shareholders have rights. They have voices that must be heard. So at any given time, under a democratic dispensation, the subject or questions to do with minority interests have always, in fact, more than anything, if I were in the speaker's seat, I would have done exactly what he did. And despite the hedging, despite the fierce debate, besides the resistance I sensed at that moment in time, the speaker was not looking at it from the point of view of a politically appointed speaker. He was looking at what would happen in the interest, first and foremost, of democracy, secondly, of peace, and thirdly, that a minority in Parliament has the audacity to ask for a recall to move this motion. Under the current circumstances, a speaker of the stature of Michael Quay was left with no options other than to allow for this motion to be moved. And I think in the interest of his wisdom too, and don't forget that he is allowed a certain latitude even for discretionary powers, but he referred to all of the discretions that are available to him, and he said that in the light of the public interest and opprobrium that this matter had generated, that it was important that it be investigated. I understand that this is particularly a public relations faux pas for any government, right from the correspondences, right from explanations, the pseudo-investigations and what have you. A lot of little things were left hanging. Indeed, there was even no coherence or consistency even in government's approach. We've been in these same offices before. I do know the challenges that sometimes you are faced with when you listen to the account of the public relations officer of the Ministry of Trade. That within itself defeats all the other explanations that we've listened to. Indeed, he is the first point of call when it comes to defending the actions, obligations, the omissions even of the ministry, as it were, at least within the public domain. Then, of course, there's a legal remit which will be within the legal department of that ministry. You know, we don't want to overly burden these issues. If you're looking at the legal legislations that have actually been breached by this singular act, there are several. If you look at the conflict situations that have arisen, likewise. If you look at the image and the damage that it does to the image of any country, this is enormous. At a time when the World Bank has come out with a research finding about the challenges with doing business in Ghana, the same expatriate communities or companies that exist here that provide key jobs and interventions for our people are being asked to pay these huge sums of money. For my part, as an individual, irrespective of what Parliament says, whether it's a majority, minority decision, whatever, I think in the interest of the public opprobrium that this matter has generated, there is a need for such a public investigation or hearing to be held.
Assuming this is what it is, those who are supposed to make the payment are not complaining. In fact, some of them have held press conferences to say, we didn't pay anything.
Samson, my brother, we live in Ghana. And I'm telling you that even those who dare would probably never see the light of day thereafter. I don't expect that they will be held before courts or arrested by the police publicly. But I'm telling you, we know how it works. I have worked in the private sector, I've worked in the public system. I know how these things go. It's pretty much the same as political victimization. You don't see it happening. The only thing is that you decide whether you want to be a victim or not. In this case, the individuals involved have chosen not to be made victims or subject matters of this discussion. In any case, in such a politically marginalized environment, we do also know the challenges. The minute you speak out, you'll be labeled. The minute you speak out, your business will suffer. But as I said, at the end of the day, it is the Ghanaians that they employ, the Ghanaians taxpayers that they are. All of the other benefits that we receive as a people are particularly challenged by issues such as these. Matters of this nature really should not happen. In fact, if the matter had ended with the Millennium Challenge whatsoever, then of course, why not? It's a private business. They want to partner a government institution to undertake an awards night. It's something they've been doing. In fact, they've held some very amazing, hugely successful award ceremonies in this country. But this is the first time that such an award or partnership with a particular ministry has generated such opprobrium. And is there a need for us to investigate it? The answer is yes. Even for no reasons. Take it that we don't even have any parliamentary whatsoever. It is something that we should all be interested in. And you know, I like the idea that sometimes we have precedents, we have other decisions that exist to serve as a guide. But listen here, I believe that democracy is in motion. I believe that power, likewise, is like a pendulum. It will shift from the minority to the majority. In fact, just a few years ago, we were in the majority. I believe that on this occasion, rather than going back to argue past such motions that were shot down by a minority or majority, I think let's look at the tenacity of spirit with which the minority on this day approached the subject matter. And I believe that all of us in Ghana watched with keen interest the arguments that were put forth for or against, the pros and cons or otherwise. It is also as a way of education, a learning process for us all. We might not all be members of parliament, we might all never even enter parliament, but at least we should see parliament undertaking responsibly its oversight responsibilities for these matters. And I must confess that on this occasion, and I'm happy that my brother Kojo is here, and I probably would have said the same thing to Mustafa if he was here. Sometimes some of these things, we overburden the subject matter. I think on this occasion, government was found simply wanting. There were too many letters, too many voices, too many different renditions of the same facts. I think it didn't help, and it doesn't augur well also for our image as a political ruling class. And we should look at these things going forward. I'm sure that if that one information had come out, then there will be no reason for all of these noises we're making. Indeed, there will be no multiplicity of documents to reference, and you know, dates will not be so important, because this will be a matter that will be open and shut. So let's look at this as an exercise in the education and support of our democracy.
Right.
And at any given time in Ghana, we have had speakers of very high moral turpitude. Their competence is not in doubt. Their level of experience likewise. And I do think on this occasion, finding himself in that seat and with the wisdom of hindsight and history and the law in his bosom, he had no options but on this occasion to adhere to this motion and of course to allow it to stand. But with regards to his terms of reference, I think there's still a lot to be done, because I think that it even clearly skirts around the substance of the matter at hand. And maybe clearly there was a lot of tension yesterday. He may have come there unprepared for the onslaught. So chances are some revision or some additions will be made. And I believe that he also has a discretion to be able to do that if he so is inclined to. But of course, there are several other schools of thought around the table, and I'm sure we'll be happy to listen to them as well.
So we'll listen to Martin Kpebu now, and after him, we'll take a break and return to our next subject. We have about 3 more subjects to deal with before 12 noon. Now, Martin, you hear Joyce clearly suggest from the tone of the TOR, the terms of reference, that obviously something is wrong. Do you find that if it is the case that the majority was for this, if it is the case that they were for the probe, it could be because they knew what they had agreed would be the terms of reference, which will not go into the substance? And what do you say? Anti-graft bodies have raised issues with the president doing what he did, as in clearing his appointees in the process. Do you think that this finding or this probe will yield anything? People say it's so predictable.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'll take off from where you landed. Excuse me. Yeah, so, I mean, looking at the matter thus far, yes, I go with those who take the view that the matter is so predictable that it doesn't look like this case would actually, or this investigation would actually find fault with what happened. So, because, you see, as you stated earlier, for the majority itself to have agreed, from what Honorable stated, that before, pre-sitting, they had agreed about the composition of the membership and the TOR. So that tells you that they are very confident that there's nothing untoward. Yes, otherwise, I mean, it will be foolhardy. These are experienced politicians. Before they take such an action, we will presume that they have looked into the crystal ball and they are very sure of themselves that it won't bring any, unfavorable outcome. That is why, presumably, they would have agreed. Despite the problems with the motion, you see that the motion had its own challenges and the rest, you see it. So, but we must say that notwithstanding, we should be happy as a people that for the first time, the committee has been set up, because from what Honorable recounted, you see how the 40s matter went, you see how the fourth saga went, okay, and the other examples.
They're rejected on grounds of law. You don't agree?
Well, those were, see, just
the same grounds
exactly, that is the point. Yesterday, they could have used the
But
same
on this
example.
occasion, why would they be rejected?
No, because the speaker has a discretion. Yes,
but
he has a
exactly.
discretion.
So it will be on the wish.
So the question is, what would
Yes.
be, is there any similar grounds of law to have rejected this one? This is not pending before SHRAG. It's not pending before a court.
It is not in court.
Which were the main reasons for the
Absolutely.
rejection of the earlier
And
ones?
that is clearly a very
But
important
even
fact.
notwithstanding, let's go back to the earlier ones. When the matter was before the court, you see, Honorable Nkrumah stated earlier, could it have been that after the court had decided the 40s matter, Parliament would then have used that decision to take a decision? No. Parliament, if it wants to take a decision based on such a case, had to conduct its own investigations. So the reasons that had earlier been given, that this matter is pending before a court of law, so we would desist and all those, to be candid, do not.
Can I help? Let me quote from Standing Order 93-1, in which has been ruled upon as the sub judice rule since the days of Speaker Alajete. And I have the hazard here.
And when you're done, let me quote Order 80.
93-1 says, reference shall not be made to any matter on which judicial decision is pending in such a way as may, in the opinion of Mr. Speaker, prejudice the interests of parties to the action.
Thank you. I think we should stop there.
You to read.
Yeah.
Order 80 says, except as provided in paragraph 2 of this order, no motion shall be debated until at least 48 hours have elapsed. This period not including days on which the House does not sit. After notice as prescribed in Order 78 has been given. What it meant was that yesterday itself, if we were minded, we will not even take that motion.
No, it doesn't apply. It doesn't apply to Article 1123 and Order 38.
1123
check
is
Order
a
38.
constitutional provision that only allows you to do a request. But once you come into Parliament, the standing orders apply.
Order 38 is clear. This matter was decided. It was decided in the Monday, 6 January 2040, during the recall of Parliament on the 40th merchant bag. The Speaker put this matter to rest.
That's a decision they don't subscribe to.
Order 38. You see, I thought we were looking at sub judice, because you had said that there's nothing in our standing orders if a matter is pending before the court that stop Parliament. And I've settled that matter
No,
with
no, you
Order
haven't.
93.
What you read
Okay,
is that to
thank
the
you.
extent that it
Thank you.
prejudices the matter.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
different from a general
Thank you.
blanket
It's
rule.
Martin's-
It is
it's
a different
Martin's-
I have Speaker
it's
Lajete's
It's Martin's
explanation on
time.
it.
matter. It's a very
It's
different
Martin's
matter.
time.
Speaker,
Thank you.
You are wrong.
gentlemen.
Speaker
Thank you,
Lajete
gentlemen.
has
The
enunciated
two of you
on that-
obviously
on that
will not
matter.
agree on the
Exactly.
interpretations to these orders and provisions of
Yes.
the law.
Order
Let's go.
38
Yeah,
gave
so
you
this is the
no
way I
option.
proceed.
Right.
Look, my sense of
You
this
had no
matter,
choice in the matter.
my sense of this matter is that, look, ultimately, it boils down to the discretion of the Speaker. As Honorable stated, look, that motion could have been thrown out. It could have been. But to
what
the
grounds?
extent that, I mean, you saw what he read, even the timing,
several grounds
and
on
even
the
the incompetence
That
of the
matter is
motion. Look,
processed.
let's be very
It
candid.
would not
You
have
see,
been capricious on his part to throw it out.
no, based on
On
precedent.
the grounds that were raised were not frivolous.
No, I don't think
Very
so. Because
frivolous.
look, your
Very
motion,
frivolous.
sometimes you go to court all the time. You know how motions are thrown out on preliminary legal objections. Preliminary legal objections.
Can
You know,
you
we
explain
know
why
how
he says the
also
motion
we
was
know how
frivolous, was
also
incompetent?
Yeah.
motions
And sometimes,
motions
yes.
may have some defects,
Yes.
but the defects are not deemed to be irredeemable.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
the court says proceed because this is
But
irrelevant.
in this case, we
Very
read-
good. So that requires a judgment call, and that judgment call came from the Speaker.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that it depends on the man in the seat,
Okay.
the saddle.
Which was
So
my
he-
emphasis.
Yes. So he chose to let it go. So I think that one we must allow the Speaker. Okay. Yes, it's commendable. That is the way to go. So at least that's a lesson. Maybe next time Honorable's party comes into office, the Speaker, generally, yes, exactly. So that we
If there's
I
a case,
disagree.
if there's a case pending at the court and tried with Order 93
Thank you, thank
with
you,
Peter
thank you. It's
Lajete's-
Martin speaking,
with Peter
please.
Yes,
It's Martin
Lajete's- with
speaking.
Peter Lajete's
Thank you,
pronouncement
Kojo.
on the
And
certificate
sometimes
rule.
I believe that
We have
with
no
the same
choice.
discretion,
Please.
any speaker at any time can decide how these things are done.
Good. So let me proceed.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is how it goes. So
Proceed.
that I mean, and that's it's good the Speaker took that decision because you know that as ordinary Ghanaians, we really wanted an independent body to look into it.
He
because-
emphasized the interest of
Yes,
justice.
Exactly. Because you see, it didn't look good that the president came out to
Yeah.
clear the minister. No. It's better that we have an independent body look into it so that the decision would be seen as being neutral. Because you see, the president appoints the ministers and the deputy ministers. So to the extent that he looked at it, it was seen more like, oh, okay, these are his own. He would be careful not to make a determination that would then cause the party more trouble. You see, so my sense of the matter is that to the extent that Parliament is probing it, that is better.
You
It
can
would
strengthen that argument to say the majority on the committee is MPP.
Yes.
So they will also say these are our own. And in any case, our president
Yes.
has ruled on this matter.
Yes.
So we should not be here to say otherwise.
Of course, we can't run away from it. That inherent bias will be
So
there.
if we can't accept what the president will say about his own, why should we accept what the MPs will say about
The difference
their
is
own?
that, yes, the reason we would accept the MP's own is that at least this is a bipartisan committee. So at least the minority will have an input. But what happened earlier with the president was that he did it on his own.
And they want it to
Exactly.
be done publicly, not in camera.
And that is good. That is good for our democracy because with that transparency, we all can judge for ourselves. So that even having watched the proceedings, each person is entitled to his own judgment. And if the committee says otherwise, well, citizens would decide for themselves.
Thank you very much. Could you say 30 seconds? And I'm just thinking, when he sat here, did he believe his guests when they said 30 seconds? 30 seconds, could
30
you?
seconds. Just claim that the president came out to clear should not be put out as though the president sought to gag anybody else from looking into this matter. Remember, the kind of allegations that were put out into the public domain were literally scary. For the first time, you literally had a president instructing a minister, respond to me by 5 p.m. After having reviewed that, the whole country was now wondering, what information is the president now privy to? And that is all the president sought to say, that I've looked at it, I haven't seen these allegations founded here. So, Mr. Minister, explain to the nation what you explained to me.
Okay.
And if what you have shown me is what you showed them, I believe that they will believe it. So it's not as though the president was seeking to gag anybody else from investigating.
We take a break here. When we return, we have a lot to do, and we will try to see how we're running against time, really. But the issues are all important. When we return, we have the assent to the Office of Special Prosecutors bill to deal with, and the president says those who are talking, he's not doing anything. They should just get ready. President Mahama has replied him, yes, we are ready. But guys, in the NDC, you need to support your own. Kokwa Yedoho says, look, we won't waste our time following any criminals to court. Dr. Bawumia says this will bring discipline, will it? And Justice Emil Short says, look, advertise a job. Don't handpick people and give it to them, because if you do that, you're not actually going to secure the independence that you're seeking. We'll talk about GBC and DVLA and SHRAJ. We'll be right back.